Welcome. Tonight, you will be descending softly into the quiet stone corridors of a world rarely shown in grand tapestries. The world not of kings or knights, but of those who served them. We're not telling tales of valor on horseback or great lords in the banquet hall. This is a slower story, a quieter one. The story of those who rose before the sun, who walked the halls without making a sound, and whose hands were calloused from the small, invisible labors that kept the castle alive. Let the fire crackle low beside you. Let the weight of the day drift away. And step with me now, through time, into the hard floors, the worn wool, and the unseen lives of a castle servant. Imagine you are 14 winters old. Your hands are rough, though still small, your fingernails lined with ash, and your breath visible in the morning chill. The floor beneath you, packed stone, is always damp, always cold. The hearth in the great hall hasn't been lit yet, and your bed, if it can be called that, was a pile of woven rushes near the scullery wall. You are a servant, not of the court, not even of the lord directly, but of the castle itself. Your job begins before theirs, before the bell tolls, before the rooster crows, before the lord has even stirred in his feathered bed. The kitchen is your first destination, a low-ceilinged room that never fully dries. You step through the half-light and pull your shawl tighter across your shoulders. Ash clings to everything, to your sleeves, your cheeks, the inside of your nose. Your first task is kindling. The fire must be coaxed from cold embers to flame, and you must do it quietly. The kitchen master does not enjoy noise, and he will be down soon to shout about lateness, even if you were early. Water must be drawn. The well is a short walk across the courtyard, short but treacherous in winter. You know the stones well. You know which ones are slick with moss. Your hands sting from the iron bucket's handle, and your feet, wrapped only in worn wool, are already damp. One slip, one spill, and you'll be sent back, again and again, until it's done properly. There is no allowance for clumsiness. By the time the household begins to stir, distant voices, a shutter thrown open, a door groaning on its hinges. You've been working for over an hour. The bread has been set to bake, and you fetch the chamber pots from the family's rooms above. You don't meet their eyes. You are not expected to. There are stairs that you are not allowed to take, corridors you are not meant to be seen in. Your movement through the castle is rehearsed, like choreography. You've learned to make yourself invisible, to walk with your head low, to hold your breath when passing nobility in the corridor, to greet with a nod, never a word. Midday, and you are back at the hearth, this time scrubbing blackened pans or peeling root vegetables while the cook barks instructions. You eat little, usually the hardened ends of bread or the thinner broth made from yesterday's bones. You eat standing, in a back corner, while others are still being served. Then you return to work. The rooms must be aired. Straw must be changed in the guard quarters. The rushes in the great hall must be swept and sometimes replaced. Fresh rushes, scented with mint or lavender when the lady of the house insists, though never for your sake. You are not permitted idleness. There is always a task. Even if it is just polishing a hinge, arranging the woodpile, brushing away cobwebs, or counting linens. You begin to notice the smallest things, a crooked tapestry, a loose stone, a creaking door, because they will become your burden if left unattended. By nightfall, you are exhausted. Your arms ache, your back is sore, and your tunic smells of smoke and boiled fat. There will be no hot bath, no fresh sheets, no soft words to end the day. Just a nod from the steward, a flickering candle near the wall, and your straw pallet by the kitchen hearth, still faintly warm from the oven's fire. You sleep as you live, unnoticed. And tomorrow, you'll rise again before anyone else to make their comfort feel effortless, and your presence invisible. Picture now a world far from the kitchens and rush-strewn floors you walked before. The world of tapestries and whispered diplomacy. a world not of invisibility, but of presence so strong it reshaped kingdoms. This is the world of Eleanor. Eleanor of Aquitaine was not quiet, not in the way history expects women of her time to be. She was not a servant, not even a noblewoman, tucked politely to the side. She was a duchess, a queen of France, and later, a queen of England. And yet, her life, in many ways, unfolded through corridors just as narrow, and decisions just as constrained, as the servant girls. She was born in 1122 into wealth so vast it matched that of some kings. The Duchy of Aquitaine stretched across rich lands of southern France, full of vineyards, courts, and troubadour poetry. And from a young age, Eleanor was watched, not only by courtiers, but by alliances, by expectations, by the slow, grinding machinery of dynastic power. When her father died, she became the most eligible noblewoman in Europe. Her hand in marriage wasn't about affection. It was about land. And so she married Louis VII of France. Their marriage was uneasy. Louis was deeply religious, almost monastic, and Eleanor was not. She wore bright silks, laughed too easily, and brought a flair for Aquitanian song and beauty to a court that preferred austerity. She accompanied Louis on the Second Crusade. It's a rare thing for a queen, and there. The stories of scandal began to follow her. Stories historians debate to this day, though few can say what's true. Perhaps the truth is simpler. She was a woman with voice and confidence, and that alone unsettled many. Eventually, her marriage to Louis was annulled, and within months she married again, this time to the future King Henry II of England. With Henry, she bore many children, including Richard the Lionheart and King John. But the marriage soured with time. Henry was a ruler of ruthless ambition, and Eleanor, even in her late 30s, held too much influence for comfort. She supported her sons in rebellion against their father, an act that led to her imprisonment for over a decade. Imagine her then, not in a damp servant's quarters, but confined within royal walls, guarded and watched. Her garments would be fine, her food better than most, but her freedom as thin as parchment. Power, in her case, had come at a cost. And yet, even after imprisonment, she returned to politics. She brokered marriages, negotiated truces, and ruled in her son Richard's absence. She rode across Europe well into her 70s, cloaked not in invisibility, but in a reputation too heavy to ignore. Eleanor was not easy, not quiet. But her life was shaped by corridors all the same. She walked through courts and castles with an awareness of every eye on her. She endured scandal, expectation, and confinement. She shaped the lives of kings, and never quite belonged to any of them. Where the servant disappears into the stone, Eleanor carved her initials into it, and both, in their own way, survived the silence history so often places around women. The castle is still now, not silent. Never silent, but still. The fire has burned low in the great hall. The day's bustle has hushed to a murmur. But if you listen closely, beyond the wind echoing against the stone, beyond the quiet rattle of shutters in the upper rooms, you might hear footsteps, soft, deliberate. Not from the main stairwell, grand and echoing, but from somewhere else, a passage meant to be hidden. In every great medieval castle, there were two kinds of spaces: those meant to be seen, and those meant to be passed through unseen. The secret staircases were never truly secret, not in the sense of being unknown, but rather unspoken. Invisible to those who mattered, indispensable to those who served. You would have learned these stairs before you learned most other things. Which ones creaked? Which ones turned too tightly to carry a full tray? Which ones ended in stone doors that only opened from one side? Their narrowness wasn't accidental. They were built that way, not just to save space, but to force you to keep your head bowed, your shoulders in, your presence small. Some staircases wound through the very walls between two rooms where stone was thickest. Others traced the edges of towers, curling around in tight spirals, their stones smoothed over centuries of footfall. Many were unlit, the idea being that you, the servant, would learn to feel your way, to move by memory, to never intrude upon the lighted paths above. In some castles, these passageways connected the most intimate rooms, from kitchen to great hall, from pantry to bedchamber. They allowed the Lord's meals to arrive hot, his clothes dry, his chamber pot emptied, without ever needing to see the face of the one who carried them. But the stairs weren't just about efficiency. They were about control. The design of a castle told you who you were. The fact that you couldn't be seen meant that you were meant to be known. The fact that your path was different, steeper, darker, reminded you that your role was below, not beside. And so you learned the rules of the stairs. When to pause for others, how to listen for movement above, when to stop mid-step because a noble had lingered in a doorway you needed to pass. You may have passed lords, ladies, knights, all without being acknowledged, or worse, acknowledged only with a glance that said, "You are too visible." And yet these stairs also offered something else, a strange kind of power. You knew the inner workings. You knew which doors stuck in the rain, which rooms remained cold no matter how many logs were burned. You knew when the master's voice grew sharp, and when the lady wept in the solar. You were the breath of the castle, its heartbeat in the spaces no one spoke of. The secret staircases were never drawn on maps, but if they had been, they would form veins, narrow and unseen, keeping the body alive. And as you walk them, night after night, tray in hand, candle flickering low, you begin to feel it, that the life of the castle isn't in the throne, or the hall, or the banners waving from the ramparts. It's in the rhythm of your steps on stone, in the way your fingers brush the cool wall to guide your way, in the invisible path you walk, over and over, so that the rest of the world may never see how it all holds together. If the kitchens were the belly of the castle and the staircases its veins, then the solar, the Lord's private chamber, was its beating heart of comfort and quiet power. High above the damp courtyards, above the bustle of servants and the chill of the lower halls, the solar was a space apart. A room not designed for show, like the great hall, but for living, for reading, for writing letters, for speaking in hushed tones, for being at ease. The word solar comes from the Latin solarium, a place of sun. And true to its name, the solar often sat atop the house, tucked near the warmth and light of the uppermost level, where windows opened toward the best view and where the wind was gentler. It was not grand in the way modern luxury imagines, but it was comforted by things most in the castle never touched. The floor, for instance, may have been covered in layered wool rugs. The walls hung with tapestries, not just decoration, but insulation. You could press your hand against the weave and feel its warmth, its texture, its protection from the cold stone behind. Cushioned benches lined the walls, and the chairs here had backs, a detail rarely afforded to the lower classes. Here, the Lord might read by candlelight or be read to by a clerk. A writing desk stood near the window, parchment curled at the corners, ink slowly drying beside a feather quill. A chessboard may lie open, mid-game, left from the previous evening. And across the room, a chest, filled with carefully folded garments, silk-lined cloaks, or correspondence sealed with wax and tied in ribbon. It was a room for planning, a room for keeping secrets, a room for quiet decision-making, not shouted declarations, but whispered strategies, a letter dispatched to a vassal, contract discussed with a steward, a prayer murmured before a personal altar tucked into the corner. The lady of the house, too, might share this space. Here she would mend or embroider, her needle rising and falling in rhythm with her thoughts. It was in this very room she might meet with her children as tutors or oversee the domestic account books, documents so detailed they often rivaled the military records kept by her husband. For all its peace, the solar was not free of tension. It was a space where control gathered, where alliances were considered, where heirs were discussed, where punishment could be decided or favors dispensed. It was where the power of the Great Hall was concentrated, not in loud proclamations, but in the quiet power of daily governance. And for a servant, one of the few permitted to enter, perhaps only to light a fire or deliver a tray. It was a place you entered silently and exited quickly. You did not linger. You did not look too long at the fine objects or breathe in the scented smoke of imported oils. You knew the space was not for you, not really. You were a ghost in the Lord's chamber, a shadow carrying warmth into a place that never grew cold. But for the Lord and Lady, this room was their world within the world, their retreat from ceremony, their seat of control, their window to the horizon, where decisions were made that echoed down to every hand scrubbing a pot or drawing water from the courtyard well. And so the castle, in its full weight and silence, turned slowly on its hidden gears, powered by the quiet labor below, and steered gently by the quiet command above. The castle was not just stone and mortar, 'twas breath and motion. Its life was carried in tired footsteps across freezing floors, and whispered across silk-lined halls. To serve within it was to know the shadows better than the light, to live behind tapestries, beneath staircases, before the world awoke and long after it slept. And yet, in those shadows, stories lived. The servant girl, the queen, the clerk, the architect, the unseen and the remembered, all part of a single rhythm. So tonight, as the fire dims and the past fades softly into silence, let their footsteps echo quietly in your mind. Let the hush of old stone halls cradle your thoughts. And let sleep, gentle and unhurried, guide you to your own solar, peaceful, private, and warm. Good night.